It's time now for Call of the Wild, the official weekly coaches show of the Wenatchee Wild. Stay up to date with your team all season long with Call of the Wild. With head coach and GM Bliss Littler, here's the voice of your Wenatchee Wild, Arch Ecker.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Call of the Wild, your weekly Wenatchee Wild coaches show. I'm Arch Ecker and my guest is Wenatchee Wild head coach and general manager Bliss Littler. Coach, last week had the opportunity at long last to have the home opener, and so much excitement goes into that. There's all the preparation in the office between the staff, the coaching staff, the players. The lights go on, the doors open up at long last, and your Wild team did not disappoint.
Well, Arch, you're right. There's a whole bunch that goes into opening night, and as a coach, the first thing is you want the players to have success. You want them to play up to their potential and not play with too many jitters. But you also feel for the staff and your fans that we see how much work goes into putting on a game behind the scenes, and there's a tremendous amount, and people that have worked hard all summer to make sure the opening night comes off without any hitches. You want the kids to play well for them also, and where you feel good about the whole staff.
Absolutely. Well, and at the end of the day, what it comes down to is what happens on the ice, because all the other stuff is the fluff, but the meat and potatoes is the 20 guys that put on the uniform that night. And once again, they came out with a pretty good start.
Well, I think both nights we definitely scored some goals Friday and Saturday. We gave up a few too many on Friday, but for the most part, the goals that we gave up, they were goals where we made mistakes, but they're mistakes made by guys trying to make plays. And this time of year, we're stressing make plays, play fast, make plays. And I think we're a little disappointed in the goals we gave up, and I think that showed that we did a little bit better job taking care of the puck on Saturday night.
You know, it's kind of an unwritten rule and maybe an old adage in the game of hockey, maybe more so than other sports. But whenever a goal is scored, the shift immediately following it is so important. And that's something that it seems that the Wild have really embraced, because when they get in this tough situation, give up a tough goal, they seem to bounce back very well.
Well, we've been very fortunate with that. But it is something that I would guess that every team stresses, that if you get scored on, that you need to go out and change the momentum the next shift, and you need to win that shift. Whether you score or not, you need to go win the shift.
Well, and the Wild have been able to overcome whatever adversities have faced them by and large throughout the season. Now, you got that 3-goal lead. You score 3 goals in the span of about 53 seconds. Mm-hmm. And now tell me about the mood on the bench at that point.
Well, you score 3 that quickly, and everybody's happy. And as a coaching staff, you're trying to keep the excitement going, but you also know that Langley's going to make a run here, or the next penalty's going to go against you, and we want to stay at a pretty even keel and not get too up or too down when things don't go our way. But when they're going like that, keep your foot on the gas.
You know, there comes a time, and opening night is one of those times. Playoffs, I think, ends up being one of those times where the phrase is, we need our best players to be our best players and to step up. And I think you got that.
Well, we have in my opinion, a lot of really good players that in our best players, our best of the best, they have been our best players from really day one this year. They've come in, they've done a great job leading, and I think the important thing when it comes to leaders is to lead by example. And when we've needed our best players to be their best, they have been.
You know, Brendan Harris, we talk about him a lot because, well, he ends up putting his name on the score sheet a lot, so it's kind of hard to stay away from talking about him. But, you know, a huge weekend from him, and not only because of what he does on the score sheet, but the stuff he does away from the puck. That's where he really shines.
He's definitely become a player that plays all situations, plays in all 3 zones. That he used to be a player that was very one-dimensional, very offensive, but he's turned himself into a player that when we need a goal or when we need to protect a lead, that he's the first guy in the back check right now, and you name it, that he's winning the little stick battles, and again, we couldn't be happier with the way his game has progressed over the years. And you're right that right now it's all the little things that are away from the puck that you might not notice, but the trained hockey eye, they see it and they say, hey, that kid, he's developed into an all-around hockey player.
The Friday night game with Langley, we talked about getting out to that 3-0 lead, and then we watched as Langley sort of crawled back into it. And you and I talked a little bit in the pregame show on Saturday about learning lessons from that, because it's very easy for anyone in any sport, no matter what you're doing. You get out to a lead, maybe you take your foot off the gas just a little bit. It's just human nature. It's tough to battle through. The following night, you found yourself in the same situation. Bang, you get 3 quick goals. Lesson learned.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope we remember that lesson. But, no doubt about that we weren't happy with. We're happy with the outcome, winning the hockey game. But as far as we thought we played much better than a 5-4 win, and that's how it turned out. And so the next night, I think it was a little bit better effort. That we're going to do a better job protecting the puck. We're going to do a better job at stopping on loose pucks instead of going for the quick flyby, regardless of what the score is. That we keep talking about what our standards are, that what's acceptable in our locker room. What are we going to say is okay? What are we going to be held accountable for? And I know the best teams that I've coached, the players hold each other accountable. It's not just the coach holding the players accountable. And you heard a lot of it on Saturday when we had our meeting in the morning. You heard a lot of guys talk, and as a coaching staff, it's really good when you see them show up and back it up at night, where it's kind of that old saying, walk the walk and talk the talk. And they did. They talked about it in the morning, and then they backed it up at night.
We've talked in the past a little bit about the fact that some of the newer players and the first-year players have really melded in very quickly, and sometimes it's difficult to identify them at a glance. Jasper Weatherby is one of those kind of players, and he showed up big with a couple of huge goals.
He sure did. He hasn't seen a whole bunch of ice time yet, and his ice time is definitely going to increase. That we're very happy with him. Him and along with 3 or 4 other first-year guys that you'll see their ice time increase. But with Jasper, he's got a pretty good upside. That he's a big, strong kid that skates well, that likes to finish his checks, goes to the dirty areas, and he has a knack to score goals too.
And he's well liked amongst his teammates as well. Of course, one of his goals was a shorthanded goal. And I wanted to ask you, different coaches approach different areas of the game from a different place. Shorthanded situations, penalty kill. Obviously, job one is to protect the house and stay home and defend your area. But there's also opportunities to sometimes pounce and turn a defensive situation into a goal-scoring opportunity. Some coaches may tend to shy away from that a little bit. What's your philosophy, and how do you approach that?
Well, we definitely the first deal is to keep the puck out of our net. That if when you're shorthanded, if you're not ready to eat some pucks, then you're just not going to play in the power play. That everybody has to be willing to block shots. We're going to be very aggressive on the penalty kill and try force the power play into making some bad decisions. But also a lot of times when you're aggressive, if you're working hard in the power play, sometimes you get the bounce, and all of a sudden the power play lets up a little bit because they feel they have the extra guy and they're just going to outskill you. And when that happens, the puck bounces your way. There's a lot of times there's opportunities for some offense.
One of the goals that stands out in my mind, and there were several highlight goals, but one of the plays that really stood out to me was Jimmy O'Brien on the right wing wall, and it was sort of a no-look, over-the-shoulder pass to A.J. Vanderbeck, and he pointed his stick to the sky and unloaded a bomb. And to have 2 guys, granted they're guys with some experience, but not together, it's their first year playing with each other, and to have them connect like that, it's got to feel pretty good.
Well, it does. Just seeing that you have 2 players that are starting to develop some chemistry with those 2 and Conzo right from the start of camp. They've had a little connection, some chemistry together, and they seem to fit well. And it's good to see guys where they kind of know where their partner's going to be without even looking at times. And It just means that you have some chemistry, and that line definitely has it.
You know, when you get in a game like the one on Saturday with Salmon Arm, you get out to a big lead. One of the benefits to that, aside from a little cushion, but you get into the special team situations late in the game, and you get a chance to get guys into those situations that might not otherwise have that opportunity.
For sure. We played our fourth line for the most part every other shift, and they got to play in the power play, where those guys generally don't play in the power play. I always say that power play is about winning hockey games and developing talent. That a good power play can turn a 3-1 hockey game into a 5-1 game, and all of a sudden when it's 5-1, those young players that might be on your fourth line are getting more ice time, and they're playing a little more free and easy, where they're not worried about making a mistake. And when that happens, when you can play without worrying about making mistakes, in my opinion, that's where you really improve. In those situations where you get up, it's a lot of times the power play has to contribute, and no doubt that was the case on Saturday night.
And then tell me a little bit about the effort you got from your guys down the stretch, helping Anthony Yamnitsky protect that shutout.
That was good. Even though we're playing some younger guys, some first-year guys in the third period, and we did that even when we're shorthanded. We just on the bench, we said, hey, he wants a scholarship too. That it's not point night, that we need to take care of the front of our net and keep moving pucks up the ice. We're a transition team and puck possession team. But we got to take care of the front of our net first, and let's help this young goaltender out. And the boys did exactly that.
This is Call of the Wild, your weekly Wenatchee Wild coaches show. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the captains. Have they been named yet? We'll find out when we return. This is your Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network. And welcome back to Call of the Wild, your weekly Wenatchee Wild coaches show. We're on juniorhockey.com, juniorhockey.ca, and NCW Life TV as well. I'm Art Jecker with Wenatchee Wild head coach and general manager Bliss Littler. Coach, one of the burning questions around Wild Nation of late has been captains. When do you name them, and when's that going to happen? And as of today, apparently that decision's been made.
Well, I've told you in the past, Arch, that we don't hand out the letters real freely here. That we make them earn it. The players do pick who's going to be their captains, and first thing it comes down to, they got to care. They got to care about their teammates. They got to care about the logo on the front of the jersey. And if they're not a caring person, then they're not going to be a captain. And then from there, they got to be able to hold themselves accountable. Once you hold yourself accountable, then you're able to hold your teammates accountable. But if you can't control yourself, there's no way you can hold anybody else accountable. So it takes a while. We go through a leadership book, and we do a chapter a week for the most part, and we do some exercise to help guys identify who our real leaders truly are, not just who our best players are. And we've come to that conclusion that there's three guys that keep coming to the top, and the players have named Rockwell as our captain, Harris as an assistant captain, and Jones as an assistant captain, as well as I think we have eight in our leadership group. That again, I feel that it's probably one of the strongest group of veteran players that I've been associated with in my 20 plus years. So sometimes leading an older group's tough too. Everybody talks about how tough it is to lead a young group, but sometimes when you have a lot of older players that, or veteran players I should say, that can be tough too. But I think with this group, I think those three are going to have a lot of help from the other leaders on the team.
And the three that you just named, those are your three most tenured players on the roster. Tyler Rockwell played in his 100th game. It was the final game of last year. And of course, Jones and Harris coming into this season, both with 134 games each, and they're both on pace to pass Mike Coyne for the most games ever played in a Wild sweater. So you've got guys that are a little long in the tooth. They've been obviously with the franchise. They understand the dynamic of what it is to be a member of this franchise and the culture that you've helped create.
No doubt, they're the ones that they've been through it. They know the culture that we have here, the expectation, the standards that we set, and I have no doubt that this year's group will they'll carry on those traditions and the culture that has been established by guys like Michael Coyne.
So the homestand continues. The first two out of the way this weekend. The Prince George Spruce Kings come into town. You started off your season on the road in their barn. Had some success, obviously, but since then, Prince George has kind of turned things around a little bit. They were winless when we got there. Not so much anymore. They've been winning hockey games, and maybe they've found their groove a little bit, which means definitely that the Wild need to be sharp heading into this weekend.
For sure. We need to have our A game. That again, every player in this league has pride. Nobody likes to drop 3 at home, especially. And I'm guessing that it's a group up there that. Their coaches made some adjustments, and they'll come into our building with their best effort, and we're going to have our A game.
Certainly. And you know what, in the midst of all of it, and I know we talk about it once in a while, but it bears repeating, is that in the midst of all of that, with travel, with home stands and home games, somehow you manage to keep your players involved in the community. They're showing up in schools, they're working with the youth hockey. Just tell me a little bit about that once again.
Well, every Tuesday and Thursday, we have all players that are not in high school. They're in the schools with our Learning with the Wild program. So they're extremely busy on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. We also take care of the Learn to Play program for Wenatchee Amateur Hockey Association. We have players that go out with an ADM program on Mondays. We have players that go out with the mites on Monday. We have players that go out with the ADM program on Tuesday. And we also do the squirts, peewees, and bantams. So we have all the Waha kids for the most part. We have them all covered, and so our kids are out there. And we also send our kids a couple times a month. On Thursdays they go out and play games and have fun at the senior center. So our kids, they average between 80 and 100 hours of community service. We just call it giving back. All our players are very fortunate to be able to play hockey at a high level. And to play here, it's a big deal to give back to the community. And we're awful proud that our players can give back those type of hours.
You mentioned the ADM, and there are those that don't know what the ADM is.
No. I'm sorry, just the hockey coach. I mean, it's the American Development Model. It's a style of practice, small area games, stations that we're a huge believer in the ADM program with USA Hockey, and we really pushed it hard with Waha here in town, and they've allowed us to set up 2 practices a week. With one is mites and squirts, and the other is the peewees and bantams, and they go out there with our Tier 1 players that play in our development teams. There's at least 2 coaches between the development teams and the Wild that are on the ice, as well as I think we have 3 or 4 players with each group, and they're just out there to demonstrate and to pump the kids up and let them have a little bit of fun, and hopefully we give them some high level teaching.
And you know, you talk about the players giving back and donating the hours and the man hours that they invest in the community, but when it's all said and done, and when you meet with the players at the end of the year in your exit interviews, I would imagine you find that it's not just a chore, it becomes a rewarding, engaging activity.
For sure. That and we do other things, but those are the 3 main things that we're involved with. But there's no doubt these kids, they create relationships with the youth hockey. They create relationships when they're in the schools. That there's many times that we get calls for birthday parties that, hey, can we get Brendan Harris to come out? He spoke to our son. He was with the Learning with the Wild program. He read to my son, and is there any way we could get him to come out to my son's birthday party? We get all kinds of requests like that from those 3 opportunities that our kids have to interact in the community.
Well, you know, they always say there's nothing like sleeping in your own bed. A nice little 4-game homestand, that bodes well for not just the players but for the staff as well, yeah?
Absolutely. Again, we have one of the best buses in junior hockey, and again, I'm thankful every time we get on that.
Also thankful when you get off it.
Well, you know what? You're right, Arch. That again, our accommodations that David White he allows us to. The kids travel well, they sleep well, they eat well on the road. But again, I'm pretty partial to my wife's cooking in my own bed.
Indeed. Home games this weekend for the Wenatchee Wild as they have the Prince George Spruce Kings in town. That'll wrap it up for this week. It's Call of the Wild. I'm Arch Ecker with Bliss Littler on your Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network.
You've been listening to Call of the Wild, the official weekly coaches show of the Wenatchee Wild, a presentation of the Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network.